Hello and welcome to the 16th ever episode of the Unsigned Manager podcast. My name is Siji Kolawole, and each week I take a look at football's biggest headlines, stories and events from both the past and the present to break them down a little bit further and see what we're really dealing with. Now, this week's episode is basically just a continuation from last week's, where I started my Premier League big fat season preview. I know it's weird to be doing a preview when there's already been a game week, but it is nice to have seen everyone play, and I can't watch everyone every week, so for some teams this is a complete preview. Like I said last week, today's episode is going to be like a best of the rest. So out of the top four, who am I looking at, who am I keeping my eye on, who can make a little bit of noise? I use the best very loosely with some of these teams, and I'm going to start where it hurts most. And let's get into this Arsenal team. Alright, so a bit of background. Historically one of England's biggest clubs, Arsenal have had a horrendous last few seasons. It's actually quite painful. It used to be funny to be an Arsenal fan because even though we didn't win trophies, we played the best football and we had the most attractive players and we could do all this stuff, but now it's so dry. Our legendary manager was hounded out of the club without much thought about who was going to replace him. And then Unai Emery comes in. And to be fair to him, Arsenal made a Europa League final with him in charge. But we were so poor for such long stretches that the only surprise of him being sacked is that it didn't happen 6 months earlier. I would have sacked Unai after the 4-1 Europa League final. I would have got rid of him then. The fact the club tried to keep him on for another season after that is ludicrous to me. Then we had Freddie Ljungberg, who was wearing designer trainers on the bench, which would have been flair, would have been sick, but we were 8th at the time. So it was just embarrassing, it wasn't funny. And now we're watching this horrible Arteta ball. Now the thing is, I'm not in or out on Arteta yet. I don't know anything about him. I don't know if he's a good manager. I know that a year and a half isn't enough. I know that for a fact. I don't think there's enough evidence to tell whether he's good or not, but right now it's not trending great. And maybe that's because I hope he's good, because he played at the club and he obviously seems like a smart guy and he has an idea of what he wants the team to look like, so maybe I'm just saying that because I want him to succeed, but still, I don't think a COVID season after picking up from the madness that Unai left is a fair shot to give a brand new manager, because people are forgetting this is this guy's first ever number one job. So of course there's going to be a breaking in period, plus COVID, plus he's working with a bad squad. But he is dancing on ice. Not many Arsenal fans are as nice as me. Arsenal are in an odd position where they're still commercially a big club with big aspirations, relatively big money, playing players big wages, but they've got such a mid-table and poor view on squad building and transfers, and the decisions under Arteta have been awful. I know it's just meant to be a season preview for this year, but this will all mean something. Just give me a second. Thomas Partey for 45 mil. Good signing. Age profile might be slightly off, 27 years old, but if it wasn't for injuries, you wouldn't have any questions about it. The only problem with Partey is when the squad is at its best, when Saka and Smith Rowe, Martinelli and all the guys we're in love with, when they're at their peak, Thomas Partey will be past his, but for right now, does his job. Gabriel, he's not bad. He's not exactly John Terry, but 25 mil is not terrible for his level of player. We'll take it. Pablo Amari, I don't know about this guy. He's not very physical. I don't think his ball playing makes up for the fact that he's getting Lindelof all over the place. I don't know about him. Cedric, I don't understand. Either someone had some premonition that Tierney was going to get injured and decided that playing a mid-30s right back at left back would have been a great decision. But if not, then someone just signed Cedric. And he's not good enough. Cedric. And then there's the one that obviously made all Arsenal fans lose the plot. Willian, at this point, I even feel bad for Willian. He wants to leave. No one wants him there. He's out of shape. Willian's got to get out. And I've said this on other podcasts, but the reason that Willian is so bad is because he's ineffective for a player of his age. He doesn't have his pace anymore, doesn't have that burst. Willian was never like rapid, but he could blow by you real quick over the first couple yards, which gave him just enough time to do the classic Aaron Lennon, I'm going to just blast it across the box with my eyes closed. And he's not creative enough to play as a 10 like he wants to, and Arteta tried it, but Willian at 10 wasn't really putting fear in anyone's heart. And then number 2, he's on 110k a week on a 3-year deal for a player who won't be there when we're trying to make a title push. So why give someone a pension when you could give a young player who's going to be at his peak when Martinelli, Saka, Smith Rowe are all at that level? Why not sign a young player and invest in him? Not just take all Chelsea's old players. The signings before this summer, those ones, they weren't great. That's very meaty. Which is why when the noise came out about Arsenal gearing up for a big Chelsea-like summer to get Houssam Aouar, a striker, a centre-back, a top full-back, that's when the fans were all excited. You couldn't go on Twitter without Arsenal fans going all mad. The club knew that they had holes from the back end of the season. They knew that there was issues in the squad. So they should have been prepared and making bids throughout the Euros so that their signings would have been able to sign just after the Euros, take a break, have a full pre-season and come back to the club ready to start. So my first issue, what is up with William Saliba? Why doesn't Arteta want him? I don't get it. David Luiz has left, who was our best centre-back. David Luiz is our best centre-back for me, not even close. Chambers is now a full-time right-back. Goodness. Mari isn't great. Why not give Saliba some game time to settle into the team? It's not like he can become the worst defender at the club. I understand Arteta might have personality issues with Guendouzi, and if the gaffer doesn't like you, there's no point being there. But Saliba can't have any management problems. He's only been there for 3 months and they shipped him back to France. Arsenal just disturbed his peace for nothing. Why not? Give him minutes. Give him cup minutes. Anyway. Nuno Tavares, I'm happy about. We all love Tierney, but he's a bit injury prone, so it is useful to have someone that can cover for him, especially another attack-minded wing-back. I will be honest, I never heard of Lokonga before we bought him, and everyone looks good on compilation, so I don't even watch any clips of that. If I can't watch you in the game, I don't really want to watch you, because anyone can put dubstep behind a video and make all the colours go mad, and that's it, you look like Zidane. Lokonga seemed to have a solid pre-season, but too early to judge, to be honest. Positives are that it's low risk, relatively cheap price, I think about 15 mil. He's only 21, so we've got a long way to go with him. And now Arsenal star signing of the window, Benjamin White. In a vacuum, this is a good signing. I'm not angry about it at all. Obviously, the price is eye-catching, 50 mil. I think it almost looks worse because he didn't play at the Euros. So it looks like Arsenal signed a fringe player, but young defensive prospect, good number of years on his contract, strong Premier League season, 50 mil makes sense to me. The issue with the Ben White signing is that everyone knows that Ben White is great with the ball on the deck. Great passer, comfortable with both feet, likes to build from the back. Exactly Arteta's style. I see why he wanted him. We also all know that Ben White is basically built like Iniesta. He wins about 50% of his aerial duels, so it's not like he's a physical beast. No one's going to mistake him for Kurt Zouma. So we're setting him up for failure, playing him next to Mari, who is essentially Spanish Ben White, in playstyle, not in quality. He should be playing next to a dominant physical centre-back like a Maguire, or a Diaz, or a Rudiger. Even a Zouma would bring something better out of him. Someone who can deal with all the gritty stuff, so Ben White can step forward and ball play. Same way that John Stones lets Diaz do all the gritty stuff while he goes and ball plays. Ben White could be a great signing, but I have a horrible feeling Arsenal are just never going to pair him up with someone whose skill set complements him. And we're going to end up selling him for a cut price to a smart team who will put him next to someone good, and then we'll be like, oh, Arsenal got the worst out of Ben White, now look at him, Champions League winner. Aaron Ramsdale and Martin Odegaard just went through today. I'm not angry at either of them. Let's start with Odegaard. The Odegaard signing is fine, but this is classic stupid Arsenal. He left the club at the back end of last season to go back to Real Madrid. He only came to us on loan. It was clearly obvious that James Maddison wasn't going to the Euros, aka he would have been available for an entire pre-season. So why only half-heartedly pursue Maddison, then about him and Odegaard for weeks, and then re-sign Odegaard when the season's already started? If you knew you wanted him, start drafting an offer at the end of last season so he could have just stayed. If you didn't think you wanted him, then have targets in mind ready to pursue, because everyone knew that we were lacking creativity in attacking midfield. We slept on Buendia, we slept on Maddison, and now the guy we weren't sure on has to come back because we didn't sign anyone else because we weren't prepared, and he hasn't had a pre-season. I'm not actually too fussed either way about which one we would have got. Maddison is a bit more dynamic, but Odegaard can create just as well, and we saw him link up with Saka, Smith Rowe and Lacazette. It's just annoying that we poorly plan every transfer market. We spent over £132 million this summer, and we're not any better. We've managed to spend the most in Europe this summer, and we're not better. Ben White just offsets the loss of David Luiz. Yeah, he's a better player than David Luiz, but this version of him next to Mari will not be a better player than David Luiz. I have no idea if Lokonga's good enough to start. Odegaard was in the starting 11 anyway, and Nuno Tavares will be playing back up to Tierney. So we might have spent 100 mil and not got any better. Classic Arsenal. The only good news for Arsenal is that Aubameyang cannot be as bad as he was last year. Last year probably was his worst season in 7 or 8 years, and I doubt he'll be that poor again. Although him and Lacazette both have just been isolating with positive COVID tests, so who knows how good they'll be. But if he can hopefully chip in with about 15 to 20, and then the 5'8" target man can get maybe 9 or 12, we might just about finish 8th again. We actually would be an achievement. If it wasn't for Saka and Tierney, it would not be much reason to watch this club. A month ago, Granit Xhaka had all but packed his bags for Roma. And then what happens 4 weeks later is he's signing a 3-year deal. What is happening? Why are we happy to sell him, but now we're happy to keep him for 3 years? Doesn't make any sense. Basically, Arsenal aren't enjoyable. Good luck to Saka and Smith Rowe because they're going to be doing a lot of work. And if I had to honestly predict, I'd say we finish 7th and we don't challenge for anything. We're just some busy team that's around, but they're not actually doing anything. Good luck to everyone at that club. And now we switch over to the white half of North London. Let's take a look at Tottenham. Now, they've had a pretty awful preparation for the season. I can't even lie. Backtrack to the end of last year as always. So, good news. Tottenham make their first cup final in forever. The first cup final I've ever consciously watched Tottenham play. Bad news. They got absolutely battered in that final. They could have lost 6-0. And they sacked a manager with a great cup final record to save a few million 6 days before the biggest game they've had in recent years. Then they couldn't find a manager for months, and I mean, this was so embarrassing. They tried to remix the Pochettino era, but PSG said, that's not happening, go try somewhere else. Then the heavens almost opened for Tottenham, and an elite level Italian mastermind manager in Antonio Conte was in discussion to become the new gaffer. This is a guy who brought some of the best football to the national team, then smashed up the Premier League with Chelsea, then went to Inter Milan and won them their first title in a decade. This is not a joke, guy. It would have been an ultimate blessing for Tottenham if they'd signed him, because I dread to think what he could have done with Son and Kane and Ndombele. That could have been nasty. But 24 hours later, after thinking the deal was already done, Tottenham called it off because Conte apparently had too large a list of demands, and the unlikeliness that he'd play any young players sealed his fate. In fairness to Tottenham, I actually think this was the right choice. I don't really see the point in signing a manager that you're not 100% sold on and you know won't do the things you need him to do. He's an amazing manager. He probably would have made him a credible threat, but if he doesn't fit the profile, don't sign someone just to handcuff them. Conte left Juventus over a disagreement about squad building. Conte left Chelsea over a disagreement about budget. And then he left Inter Milan for exactly the same reasons. A club who couldn't handle this more relaxed version of Jose Mourinho doesn't want any part of a Conte tornado when he's told he can't spend 200 mil, so there's no point starting. Tottenham then looked at Paulo Fonseca, the former Roma manager, who is a very competent guy. He was real close to signing a deal. Then he was launched to the side when player-turned-manager Gennaro Gattuso became available. Now, Gattuso did a respectable job at his former club in Napoli, and obviously he's a well-regarded ex-pro, which almost always works in your favour. He's also got the benefit of being a young manager, mid-40s, raring to go. And he was almost over the line when the internet found out that he'd said something in the past that was really bad, and the fans rioted against his signing. So lucky contestant number 5 was given the job, as Nuno Espirito Santo became the new top don at White Hart Lane. I like this appointment, to be honest. Anyone who's ever seen Wolves play during their time in the Prem has clearly seen that Nuno is a tactically strong manager and he's able to draw elite performances from non-elite players. Willy Bolly looks like Sol Campbell in his prime, and Conor Cody could have been rivaling John Terry for minutes in the England team. They looked good under him. Fabrizio Paratici, who is Tottenham's new sporting director, he said that you only have to look at Nuno's times at Wolves to see his ability to take a group of players and implement an adaptive style that brings success and allows players to develop and thrive. Yeah, he was working with good talent at Wolves, but he also had them playing in a defensive style which aided the counter-attacking brilliance of Adama Traore, Diogo Jota and Raul Jimenez. Yeah, obviously his last season at Wolves was very tough, but when your best player and your star striker gets his head split like a melon, your other best player is sold to Liverpool and Adama Traore can't score if his life depends on it, it can be tough to get results. My only question mark of this appointment is whether Nuno fits the criteria of Levy's template manager. See, the Tottenham chairman said he wants Spurs to get back to their attacking football DNA and embrace their young players. Well, point number 2 is a definite check. Nuno can help young players make big strides in their game. Ruben Neves, Diogo Jota, Pedro Neto. However, and I might just be misinformed, I don't watch Wolves every week, I'm not sure whether Nuno played defending counter because of the players he had, or whether that's because his preferred style. Like I said, I did not watch Wolves every week, so if they were playing against lower level teams, I wasn't always tuned in. So whenever I saw Wolves play, I saw them play defending counter. Now I know that their big issue, not last season, the season before, was that they could get points off big teams because defending counter was amazing for them, especially Man City. He has the sauce on Man City. But against lower level teams, where Wolves dominated the ball, I know he found it hard to break teams down. So maybe defending counter was just his way. But anyway, let's take a look at the squad that Jose left for him. Last season's Tottenham, horrid defensively. Davinson Sanchez was particularly poor. Do you remember when he let Ilkay Gundogan throw him to the ground and then go round his keeper at the Etihad? I will never ever forget that. But it wasn't just him. Alderweireld looked over the hill. Reguilon looked like a shell of himself. And Serge Aurier was great going forward, but he's a turnstile defensively. Couple that with a timid attacking presence. Tottenham just choosing to camp in their own half and sit and defend. It wasn't exactly the best environment that Nuno walked into. So they did try and rectify that. Out went Gareth Bale to Madrid. Eric Lamela was moved to Sevilla in return for Spanish winger Brian Gill. Fringe players like Danny Rose, Juan Foyth and Joe Hart all left the club, and the big signing of the window is Atalanta centre-back Christian Romero. Now Romero is currently on a season-long loan with a £46 million option, so that's not bad considering he's 23 and it's an option, not an obligation. But none of this is important really. Not when you consider that probably the best player in Tottenham history, either him or Gaza, is publicly stinking up the gaff. Harry Kane has finally decided to push for a move. So all the season planning and all the squad building goes out the window because Kane wanting to leave changes everything. He's the league's second best striker. He probably is better than Lukaku, but that would hurt me to say. He's been a great servant to the club for years, but he's had enough. But you see this with clubs very regularly. When a star player wants to leave, there's a public tug of war where the club are digging their heels in and the player is trying every trick in the book to get out. Happened with Wilfried Zaha at Crystal Palace, happened with Ousmane Dembele at Dortmund, and it will continue happening. My bad, I'm doing a terrible job at actually explaining what happened. Essentially, Kane went to go play golf with Gary Neville on YouTube to tell everyone he wants to leave. And then he hasn't turned up for training for a while, whilst having heated arguments with Levy over wanting to move to Manchester City. And now we're at this awkward stage where everyone knows he wants to leave and he isn't playing in games, but no one on Tottenham can really say it. So we're all just shuffling around waiting for a breaking news drop. For a player of Kane's quality, he's only really been courted by one club, which is weird. But it's Guardiola's Manchester City, so. City have had £100 million bids rejected, and the latest news is that they're readying a £125 million bid, but Tottenham won't accept that either. And Kane literally could not be in a worse position if he tried. He's a star player at a big club who cannot afford to replace his output. That's strike number one. Strike number two, he signed a 6-year contract in 2018, so Tottenham have no reason to let him go. Tough one. Strike number three, his chairman is Daniel Levy, who might be the stingiest and the pettiest man in football. Ferguson once famously said that he tried to deal with Levy, and Levy changed the deal about 10 times and it ended up getting money for a photocopier or something. The guy will get anything out of every deal. And only having one club chasing you really hurts your negotiating value. Because City don't have anyone to compete with. They have no reason to up their bids. They're not fighting against anyone. If I'm being honest, I've completely wasted your time here. Because I have no idea how to review this squad if I don't know whether Kane will be there or not. If he is there and he's bought in, I'd probably put Tottenham about 6th. Just falling behind another team in this preview. However, if he leaves and goes to City, then I'd put Tottenham between 7th and 9th, because how do you replace 20 goals and 15 assists within a week or two to go in the window? Heung-min Son is a top-level player. Lucas is alright. He's effective in certain situations. Steven Bergwijn will get minutes, so he'll get better. Dele Alli has been brought in from the cold, but none of those players add to another 20 goals and 15 assists. And what's more likely to me is that he finally gets his move next summer. And we're robbed of seeing Kane score 40 goals in the league at City for 5 years straight or something. I'd be really surprised if Tottenham actually sold him. He's probably just going to have to come back and act like he never tried to force his way out, because I don't see them. He's too good to replace. Unless he went for a free, or was about to go for a free, like Van Persie at Arsenal or Kylian Mbappe at PSG, then you see why a club will let him go. But if you're Levy, why on earth would you accept anything under 150? And now, like always, I plan for these podcasts, and then football decides to throw a massive spanner in the works. Here I am, typing away about Harry Kane, wondering what Tottenham's team's going to be, looking through all the stats. And then Robert Lewandowski decides to say that he wants out of Bayern Munich. A massive spanner for everyone involved. Now, reading through all the stories, thinking with my brain, looking at squad building, it doesn't seem like Bayern will let him go this summer. There isn't enough time to go and sign someone from Borussia Dortmund, like always. And he's too good to just replace with a few patched together signings, so it won't be this summer. Quickly on Bayern, actually. Just quick thing on Bayern. I was watching the German Super Cup early this week, I think, Monday, Tuesday? Cracking game, by the way. Very strong game, very end-to-end, wonderfully stupid. But I was looking at this guy in Bayern Munich's defence thinking, I don't recognise this guy playing for Bayern. And he looks athletic and he looked kind of big. And normally I keep an eye on defenders like this because he's not bad on the ball. And who is this? And then they zoomed in and it was Dayo Upamecano. And I completely forgot that Bayern Munich signed him because they got their business done so early that it slipped my mind. Him next to Sula is a proper centre-back partnership. Bayern don't spend anywhere near what City and Barca do and all the rest, but they're doing their own version of talent hoarding too. Don't let them act like they're some high horse people. If you can afford in a random, essentially community shield game, to bring on Corentin Tolisso and Leroy Sané, then maybe your league isn't well balanced either. But the nonsense of top 4, top 5 European football will be its own episode very soon. Possibly next week. I actually want to do loads of research for that because the balance of power is ridiculous. But forget all that. Lewandowski. It'll be difficult for him to move because Bayern don't want to sell him. He's too irreplaceable right now. There's not enough notice. So yada yada yada. But him being available or wanting to leave is Harry Kane's worst nightmare. Lewandowski will be cheaper because he's older. He has better injury history, which a club will take into account because Kane has had a lot of injuries for someone who's 28. A lot. And you don't know how effective Harry Kane will be at 32, 33. You're not sure how mobile he'll be. And Lewandowski is just as potent, if not more. Kane has age on his size, but with Levy wanting an extraordinary fee and Lewandowski being available for what people are thinking is about 80 million, who would say no to that? If Bayern decide to make a deal with City and hold off for this season and grab Lewandowski at the end of next season, at the end of this season, then you get maybe 4 or 5 years of Lewandowski with Kevin De Bruyne and Raheem Sterling and Riyad Mahrez and Jack Grealish. Harry Kane needs to force that move through ASAP. Because if he has to stay at Tottenham for another year, then he'll be staying at Tottenham for the rest of his career because no one else will be getting him. Club number 3 in this preview, Aston Villa. Shout out to Aston Villa. They should be heavily respected because it seems like, heavy on the seams, but it seems like they have done one of football's impossible tasks. There are a few things in football which are almost never done well. One is turning over a phenomenal team without a few seasons drop off. Another one is going from a mid-table team to a real league contender without a big influx of money like Man City. And another thing is getting 100 pennies for a pound with a transfer. And what I mean by that is when a club sells their star player for big money, it's really hard to actually sign players who can cover their output properly. So like we were just saying with Kane, the reason that Levy doesn't want to sell him is because it is hard to find players who can score like Harry Kane. And it's also hard to fit in a load of other players who can kind of patch his stats together. Actually, it's probably even harder. Back to Tottenham. Do you remember when Tottenham sold Gareth Bale for £100 million? Big signing. Biggest in history. Do you remember who Tottenham bought with that money? At the time, Bale, Van Persie, Suarez are easily the best players in the league. So Tottenham had a tough task replacing Bale's output. This version of him was like a demon. They bought 7 players that window. Now let's play hit or miss. Eric Lamela. I have never liked him as a player personally, but he was effective for Tottenham. He was there for a long time. I can't hate on him. It's a hit. Roberto Soldado. Awful signing. Wasn't as bad back in Spain, but he was dreadful in London. Couldn't score if his life depended on it. Definite miss. Paulinho. Solid player. For some reason, I always liked him and Moussa Dembele together as a 2. I thought Tottenham should have played that more. But he was gone from the club in 2 years. And if you go to China, then you're pretty much admitting that you're washed. He did randomly end up in Barcelona, but that's a miss. Christian Ericsson, obviously massive hit. Creative juggernaut. Stayed for years and was always a big reason for their successes. Fantastic signing. Vlad Kirikesh and Nasser Chadli. Don't really have to say much about them. Miss. And Etienne Capoue was a good player, but I think he's a good player on bad teams and he isn't really built for a top side. So with £100 million and 7 players signed, Tottenham signed 2 hits. This is just another example where a club struggled to really replace a top player. Now enter Aston Villa. Grealish was one of the best players in the league last season. That's a fact, we all know. 3rd most big chances made, 4th most assists, foul 24/7, creative hub. Everything Aston Villa are doing are going through Jack Grealish. It wasn't a surprise that a superpower came calling for him, and I broke that signing down on part 1 of this preview if you want to go back and take a look, but replacing him wasn't going to be an easy task, especially when so much of their general build-up play goes through him. If he was just a striker, it wouldn't be as bad. But when everything runs through you, it's hard to patch that back together. But I actually think Aston Villa might have nailed it. The fact that Arsenal didn't sign Emiliano Buendia is a travesty for our recruitment. Buendia is 24, very creative, great footwork, smart attacking passer. When Norwich were in the Premier League 2 seasons ago, he's one of their star talents. He's one of the star talents of the league. People were talking about Buendia like he's a streets will never forget Tarapt or Ben Arthur. He's at that kind of level. And if you're a team who's just lost by far their best creator, Buendia is a phenomenal £34 million pickup to become the hub of the team and get other people involved. Probably no one else better at that price point. I see why Villa did it. I wish Arsenal had picked him up instead of Odegaard, and I like Odegaard. Also, when you've lost your best wide threat, Grealish is a great dribbler and a creator, and you need to replace him with someone young. Look no further than 23-year-old Jamaican winger Leon Bailey. This guy was a career mode gem for a few years, and even though he's 23, still a great talent who can really make an impact. 30 games last year in the Bundesliga led to 2.5 dribbles a game, 1.5 key passes a game, ended up with 9 goals and 8 assists. That's good numbers. It was unfortunate that Villa lost their first game of the year, but Bailey actually got an assist in that game. And I think they'll be more than fine. I'm not nervous about them. There might be a small regression because you've lost your top talent, but last year they finished 11th, so I'd be surprised if they did worse than that, really. Especially seeing that they signed Danny Ings to offset or pair with Ollie Watkins to make sure they've got enough finishers to bury all their chances. Because Buendia, McGinn, Bailey, Traore, they all create. So picking up another forward, another proven Premier League goal scorer, never really a bad move. Ings and Watkins are both comfortable playing as a 1. They can both play as a 2. Watkins at Brentford was a solid creator when he played as a second striker behind Neil Maupay. So I can see this being a 22, maybe 23 goal partnership this year, which is exactly what you're looking for your Villa. I definitely didn't see Ings moving anywhere. That one shocked me. But he's in that band of players in my mind who have been pretty good for so long that you don't actually think about them. Same with Azpilicueta. Well, before last season when Aspi's pace became a problem. He's one of them guys you just always think like, yeah, they got Azpilicueta, a good player, but you don't think anything about him. But he's actually very, very good. Danny Ings is a top player, and Villa have done a great job prepping for Grealish's exit early, so that all their signings are settled in, rather than bringing in a bunch of people quickly after he's been rushed out the door. Built on top of their nice midfield of Luiz and McGinn, Konsa's got another year to develop, and the best goalkeeper of all time, Emi Martinez, 9th or 10th for Aston Villa. That's what I'm looking at. I think that's pretty phenomenal after losing your star. And then last but certainly not least, Leicester City step up to the plate. You don't really have to talk too much about Leicester. They just do good business and they make good decisions. So this section will be quite quick. Sorry to all the Foxes fans. Leicester have just beaten arguably the 2 best clubs in the country in back-to-back cup finals. I'm not sure if the Community Shield is a cup, but it fits the narrative, so we move. Smart business is always from Leicester. Rarely do I say the opposite, other than Iosi Perez, who I didn't like. I haven't really been too confused by any of their transfers. Thinking about it, actually, as a club, Leicester definitely fall into that. They're so good that you don't really think about them. They just become part of the furniture. They're in that group as a club. Obviously, the end of last season wasn't great. Seeing how they fell out of the top 4 on the last day after getting battered by Harry Kane. But Rodgers has finally got some silverware. And everyone loves watching them. And it feels like you're watching your younger sibling do something by themselves for the first time. Like, you're weirdly proud of them. I don't know why I care so much about Leicester. I don't support them, but they're just doing everything the right way. Shout out to Leicester. They already have a strong squad. Star players in Vardy, Tielemans and Ndidi. But there's also unsung players in the team like Johnny Evans, Kasper Schmeichel. Both of those are definitely in that furniture group of players. As well as Mark Albrighton, who for some reason I always liked as a kid. Mark Albrighton was the guy. I don't know why. I couldn't even tell you who Mark Albrighton has played for. The guy's played for so many teams, I can't actually think of one off the top of my head, but Sharky Mark, for me, he was the guy. Leicester have spent about half as much as Arsenal this summer. Lord help us. But you could confidently say that they have signed 3 starting level players today, whereas most clubs couldn't even dream of doing that for so cheap. £60 million it looks like they've spent. So, in came Patson Daka, 22-year-old Zambian striker who tallied up 27-7 in 28 games in the Austrian league last year. Now, granted, it's the Austrian league, but Sadio Mane came from there, Upamecano came from there, the guy right now, Erling Haaland, came from there. If you're 21 or 22 years old and you're putting up over a goal involvement a game, that's not a joke. Leicester only grabbed him for £27 million, which is an amazing steal because it allows some flexibility. £27 million is low enough that if Daka does good, which is very possible, they can double or triple that in a few years if they need to sell him. It's also low enough that your manager doesn't feel obliged to play him every week. For example, I'm hating on Tottenham today, but if you're signing Tanguy Ndombele for £60 million, it's a bit confusing why your club's also trying to freeze him out at the same time. Leicester can take their time with Daka and use him as a bit part player to gain experience in the league and take minutes off Vardy, but £27 million doesn't mean that they have to play him every week. And it's also low enough that it doesn't work out in a few years and Daka doesn't look like he's improving and Leicester want to cut their ties and sell him on. He'll be in his mid-20s. It won't be too much of a loss. You can probably shift him for £20 million to another team in the league who looks like they want to take on a project. Which is exactly how Leicester got Mr. Senior Man, Kelechi Iheanacho, who just saved their bacon at the end of last season. The long-term plan probably is to run a 2-man partnership of Kelechi and Daka. But it doesn't have to be rushed because both players are under 25 and obviously Vardy's still top dog at the club. So future-proofing here, Leicester have done another fantastic job. And now they've just done even better, signing 22-year-old defensive midfield player Boubakary Soumaré from current French champions Lille. Well-touted player, everyone knows about Soumaré. Heavily linked with the Premier League clubs over the last few years, particularly Manchester United and Newcastle. And Newcastle asked St. Maximin to recruit him. And Soumaré was like, sorry, Steve Bruce, I am not coming to the north. Soumaré is a very solid defensive midfield player. Great in the air, good long passer. Interesting stat about him, he's only dribbled past once every 2 games. He's not Wilfred Ndidi yet, but you wouldn't be surprised if he became him. He's certainly an upgrade on Leicester's current backup defensive midfield player in Hamza Chowdhury. And if Ndidi finally gets picked up by a major club, Manchester United, I don't know what you're doing. That's another good piece of future-proofing right there. Ndidi goes out, Soumaré goes in, you don't lose too much. And while he progresses, because he's only 22, he'll be a quality player by in his prime. Unfortunately, we all saw Wesley Fofana suffer a really nasty injury in pre-season. I don't know why you'd make a tackle like that in a friendly game, but it looks like Fofana will be out for the foreseeable, which is sad because he was one of the best defenders in the league last year, an amazing prospect. When people think of prospect players, like he looks like he's going to be great, you always think of what they do going forward. Even with Trent, for example, all the hype about Trent is everything he does going forward. Phil Foden, everything going forward. People don't look at defenders and go, oh, he's going to be amazing. But Wesley Fofana was quality last season for Leicester. He can ball play, he can do last man defending, he's physical enough that you can't blow by him. He can play in a 3, he can play in a 2. It's sad that he'll be out for a while, but Leicester covered that as well. They signed Yannick Vestergaard from Southampton as a replacement. Vestergaard is clearly a giant, so I doubt any striker in the league will be winning a header against him and Suyuncu anytime soon. But again, that's future-proofing. Vestergaard's 29 years old, but Johnny Evans is 33. And apparently he isn't close at all coming back after his foot injury, so signing a strong, tall defender who can cover while Suyuncu is more aggressive is again a smart signing. And if he plays in the mould as Evans, you don't have to skip a beat. Vestergaard's Premier League proven, we all know he can do it in the league. That's a great spot right there. because most clubs wouldn't think of, 29-year-old striker, let's go for him. You always trying to go young, but good pickup from Leicester. And then, last but not least, they signed Ryan Bertrand on a free, which makes sense. I don't know why a club like Crystal Palace went after him, especially after Van Aanholt left. But yeah, Bertrand, solid Premier League player, does his job at full-back. Good signing. To be honest, I don't really want to waffle too much about Leicester. You know what it is, they got a great defence when healthy. Great midfield, which they've just added another top player to. They might have finally signed their long-term Vardy replacement, as well as Ian Nacho being in hot form. James Maddison staying. Harvey Barnes was phenomenal. You're not worried about them. Brendan Rodgers and the whole Leicester team have done great. They'll probably finish 5th in my mind. Just below Manchester United and above Tottenham. Hopefully they can make another cup run if Rodgers can go and grab a Carling Cup or maybe even another FA Cup. This Leicester team is here for a while when they're young. But anyway, that'll be the end of this week's preview. I just want to say thanks for all the support, all the listens, really appreciated. I was a bit iffy about the return of football, to be honest. The Euros and the back end of last season, because it was so congested, absolutely wiped me out. And I didn't think I'd be engaged, but boy am I wrong. The Premier League is the greatest thing on earth. And even though we're starting to have an issue on the rest of the league, I'm so glad that there's so much talent in the Prem all at once. The fact that Leon Bailey and Buendia are playing at a mid-table team, or that Mikel Antonio is just battering defences at West Ham, is just fun for the league. Then you don't even have to look at the quality of coaching. This is one league that's got Tuchel, Klopp, Pep, Rafa Benitez, Ancelotti just left, all in the same league. I really hope this season is a banger. I think this could be one of the top Premier League teams of all, or Premier League seasons of all time. You got 3 teams that can challenge realistically in City, Chelsea and Liverpool. You've got a team of Man United that if everything goes right, they could do something. Leicester, obviously, they're your best of the rest group. And then that fighting for the 5th, 6th and 7th between Leeds, West Ham, Tottenham, Arsenal, Villa, that's a fun little battle right there. Anyway, I'm gonna be posting every week during the season. It might be what's happening in the league right now. It might be doing the retrospectives, the old schools. It might be doing previews. It might be doing Champions League reviews, whatever it is. But just keep following, keep supporting. I really appreciate it all. See you guys next week.